our face all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station
from beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at SunSkyMysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good evening, everybody. As you can see, we are not in the normal studio. In fact, we have a pre-recorded show for you. The reason why I pre-recorded it is because, well, I had myself one of those double root canals done yesterday, and I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm not going to be appearing on camera because your media professional host has been taking painkillers, and there's nothing better than a stoned host. So, I'm not going to appear on camera tonight. Instead, I'm just going to be audio, and we are going to show you the pre-recorded show because our guest on Monday night, and this is nothing bad against the guest, L.A. Marzulli. He is a film producer, a documentarian, a blogger, and a lecturer. He is a very talented individual. He suffered through a power failure on Tuesday night. And because I host a show about alternative energy, I recorded a little primer today about alternative energy. So that's what we're going to watch tonight. Now, I had this all set to encode so it would be just absolutely beautiful with titles and everything. Oh, it's going to be great. Sadly, I've been having problems with it all afternoon. So we're just going to go ahead and play the pre-recorded stuff. So you're going to see all of the flubs and retakes and everything else during this. So let's go ahead and watch me as I attempt to fumble through a pre-recorded show tonight. Here we go. How you guys doing? Welcome to another exciting episode of Surrounded by Idiots. But tonight, I decided not to do a Surrounded by Idiots episode, but because of something that happened earlier this week on our Tuesday night interview show, I thought that I would do a basic alternative energy primer. In other words, sort of a short episode of the other show that I host in the summertime, called This Old Shack. It's about alternative energy, about living off the grid, because we have, as our bug out place, you could call it, a cabin in a very rural area of northern Michigan. It is completely off the grid. It is not connected to the grid whatsoever. However, we have all of our computers, we have phones, we can even get high-speed internet completely off the grid. No telephone lines, no cable, no satellite dishes, no nothing, but we can still live a normal, everyday life like you would right here at the Surrounded by Idiots headquarters. I'm standing in front of, right now, our alternative energy vehicle. This vehicle during the summertime is a hybrid vehicle. We use hydrogen generators to generate hydrogen gas that we run through the engine that allows this truck to get better gas mileage. This is a 2000 Dodge Dakota 4.7 liter high output Hemi head engine. It has got the towing package, it's got big tires, it's got big brakes, a big frame, and it's very heavy. We typically get 27 miles per gallon on the highway with this thing. But that's not what this show is about. This show is about what to do when you are going to be on Surrounded by Idiots and there's a power failure. So, let's get on with this very special episode of This Old Shack.
Are you ready?
German. Press 10, mark. 9, start ignition. 7, burn, engine on. 5, 4, 3,
Welcome back to the show. This is part of the system that we use for alternative energy. Yeah, it doesn't look like much right now, but that's because we brought it all back from the shack, our bug out place in northern Michigan, and we have it set up here for emergency power here. So let's go through what you would need to do if, say, a media mogul like Bill Zan is going to have you on a show like, I don't know, let's call it Surrounded by Idiots. And you're getting ready to come on the air. All of a sudden, the power goes out, just like this. And there you go, the power is out. But all is not lost. Because with a single flip of the switch, we are now running on alternative energy. The light that's provided is not connected to the grid at all. Let me show you how it works. We'll plug in the main power again and the main lights, and I'll take you through what we use for staying off the grid, for emergency power. Now what you see behind me here is a series of deep cycle batteries. These are wet batteries. A lot of people these days, they like to use dry cells. Dry cells like this one right here. This happens to be a gel cell, but a dry cell is very similar to it. You can put it in any position that you want to, and the fluid won't drain out of it or anything else. However, when you're charging these, if you overcharge them, even one time, they're done. You throw them out. It's It's a lot of money to waste. So I prefer the wet cells. Even though a wet cell battery is much heavier, and really the way to get them is to actually go and physically obtain them, rather than having them shipped to you like you could with a wet cell. As a matter of fact, this right here is a flashlight that you've probably seen. Your grandfather, or maybe you, had a flashlight like this. This is I believe this is a Stanley model flashlight. Normally it has a battery on the bottom that screws onto the flashlight head, and it has a little spotlight that's on here like this, and it has a little emergency light that flashes. But what I did was, rather than spending the $12 for each one of these little batteries that you have to throw out when you're done with them, is I bought a 6-volt rechargeable deep cycle battery. Same thing that you would find in a battery backup for your computer, a UPS, or an emergency lighting system. And this works fine. You can hook this up to a solar panel and recharge it if you want to. Don't have to worry about going out and buying batteries. Essentially, an endless power supply. So let's take a look at these deep cycle batteries that I have, and I'll show you a little bit about them and how this sort of thing works. Now these right here are the deep cycle batteries. You probably can't see me there. Maybe you can see me better now. I'm just going to be sitting here talking about these batteries. So let's look at the batteries instead of the much more important image of me. These deep cycle batteries, these are 12-volt batteries. These are connected in parallel. Each one of these deep cycle batteries is 220 amp hours. These two right here on the left are the two that are connected in parallel right now, giving me 440 amp hours of energy. Now you might think to yourself, you're probably saying to yourself, Bill, that's an awful lot of power. Au contraire, because at our alternative energy site, northernmichigansolar.com, I probably get a dozen emails a month from people that write to me and they say, Bill, my batteries are all screwed up. What can you do to help me? And invariably, those people, they connect their batteries together and get their 440 amp hours, as an example, and they use all 440 amp hours. If you do that, your batteries will last about 2 months, tops. They cost around $100 a piece. That's $200 if I were to do that to these two batteries, down the drain. Throw them out, recycle them, they're done. That's because whenever you discharge a deep cycle battery, a wet cell like these, you have what is called sulfation. That is little pieces of hard material that form on the lead plates that are part of the chemical reaction that creates the energy. Remember, batteries do not store electricity. They store the potential for electricity in chemical form. There's chemicals in there. When you apply a load to them, they create the electricity. It's how the battery in your car works. It's how this battery works. It's basically how batteries work since the 1800s, essentially. They've done a lot of upgrades, design enhancements, and everything else. Batteries are better now than they were in the 1800s, but it's essentially the same technology. These little crystals that form in there prevent the battery from creating its full potential, because those little crystals on the lead plates cover up part of the lead plates. When it gets bad enough, the batteries just don't work anymore. And you have to either use what they call, it essentially electrically vibrates the plates. It's supposed to work. Not usually. People say, oh, I'm going to get one of these, and they don't listen to rhyme or reason. It doesn't work. The only way to cure the sulfation is with a controlled overcharge. These are 12-volt batteries. When they're fully charged, you're going to get about 13 volts static. In other words, if you hook up a voltmeter, you're going to read about 13 volts. You have to run these up to 15 to 16 volts. Boil the fluid that's in there, and that will remove the sulfation. It's the only way to do it. The only reliable way to do it. But let's take a look at these batteries. Let's take a look at how you tell how much of a charge you have inside the battery. This has acid in each one of these little holes that you see here. You can see there's 6 of them here. That's 2 volts per hole for a total of 12 volts. This is what is called a hydrometer. This measures what's called the specific gravity of the fluid that's in there. Now let me get some of the battery acid in there, and we'll take a look at this. You can see there are 4 balls right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. When all 4 of these balls are floating, that means you have a full charge. When there's 3 floating, it's 3/4 of the charge. When there's just 2 floating, that's 50% of a charge. That means stop using them. I generally let this last ball here, this orange ball, float down to the bottom, then I recharge. I am very conservative in discharging my deep cycle batteries. That's why these batteries are about 6 years old. And I still have a full charge on them. Now, how do you get the power out of these? How do you turn this into usable household power? And that's with this. This is called, and this is just my little one right here. I don't have my big one available right now. This is what's called an inverter. This takes 12 volts and it converts it to your normal 110 AC power. AC power. This isn't a pure AC power. It's what's called a square wave inverter. You can get a true sine wave so that whatever comes out of the inverter is going to be exactly what comes out of your wall outlets. But for most things, this works good. I have this hooked up. You flip the switch, and you can power things like lights, televisions, computers. With this setup that I have right here, I can actually run our server, the laptop, everything, the internet even, from these deep cycle batteries. And it will work for 2 or 3 days before you have to recharge the batteries. And if things get really tough, I also have this that you see right here. This is something that I made. These are actually LED path lights, little spotlights that you see outside of people's houses. That's all this is. They run off of 12 volts also. So all I have to do is take this and connect it to another deep cycle battery, and I have lighting. This running off of one of these deep cycle batteries. These lights, 3 weeks worth of lights. They're LED lights. They don't use hardly any power. 3 weeks worth of lighting with no recharging whatsoever on these deep cycle batteries. And I know what you're saying to yourself. Bill, it's all well and good. You've got your deep cycle batteries, you've got them charged up. You can power your house with these deep cycle batteries. But what do you do when you have to charge them? What if the power doesn't come back on? This is what I use to charge up the batteries at the shack. I use 2 different methods for doing the charging. This particular camera does not have a monitor on it, so I don't even know if I'm on the camera. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Maybe all you see is my head. I don't know at this point. Check this out. Let me back off on the zoom. This is live television. Even though I'm taping this, I'm not doing any editing. I'm just taking the chip out of the camera and we're playing. This is a solar panel. Right here, this is not a crystalline silicone solar panel. This is amorphous silicone solar panel. This is essentially one great big solar cell. It creates 15 watts in full sunlight. We have enough to produce 150 watts. Enough to charge up our deep cycle battery bank over a period of a day. But now, what if it's cloudy and the solar panels don't have enough horsepower to charge the battery bank? Well, we have two different methods that we can use. Method number one, and this is the emergency method, this is the last resort, is you can take yourself what are called jumper cables, which are essentially cables that you hook up to start a vehicle that has a dead battery from a vehicle that has a good battery. I can hook it up to this old shack truck, let the engine idle, and charge the batteries. Only takes a couple hours, and if it's cold, you also have a place for getting warm. Now let's take a look at our other way that we use to recharge the batteries. Now, this mechanism that you see right here, this is a 2.5 kilowatt gasoline powered generator. Now a lot of you are probably going to be saying to yourselves, well, you know what, that's all well and good and everything, but you know what, you're going to go through a ton of gasoline. Au contraire, mal frere. This particular generator has a very efficient ignition system and motor in it, and it will run 14 hours on 4 gallons of gas. That's at, I believe, 3/4 load, which is about 15 amps of output. We typically run this thing maybe at 5 or 6 amps of output, running battery chargers and charging batteries and running, computers and things like that off of it when we have to. But it will run, the way we run it, around 20 hours on a tank of gas. That's let's see, that's $3 a gallon. That's about $15 worth of gas per 24-hour day. It's really not too bad when you consider that it's a 2.5 kilowatt output generator. It's not too bad. We've had it about 5 years now. It works good. It's got its own circuit breaker on it. You can see it's got 2 outlets. It has a 12-volt output on it to charge batteries directly or power 12-volt devices off of it. Power switch, things like that. We run it on synthetic oil. We use synthetic oil in the crankcase. We have ever since it was brand new. Even after as many hours as we have on it, that's 4 years worth of hours, we don't even have to adjust the valves on the thing because there's so little wear because of the synthetic oil that we run in the crankcase. So we use this for when we're out at the shack and there's no grid power or anything, and it's a cloudy day or a rainy day or something like that. We go ahead and we run everything right off of this generator for a day or two, and it really, one can of gas like this will last better part of a week when you're using the combination of the deep cycle batteries and the generator like this. It's really pretty darn efficient if you have the ability to leave the area and get yourself some more gasoline. If not, then you just go ahead and do what I do and take more than one can of gas with you to keep everything all gassed up. there we go. That's essentially our at-home alternative energy setup. We can charge the batteries. We have our deep cycle batteries. We have our LED lights that'll run for the better part of a month off of these things for light. If things get really bad, we have the inverter right here for powering normal household stuff like our server and the laptop, although the laptop we have one of those 12-volt car adapters and we run that off the deep cycle battery, so that uses a lot less energy. We have our solar panels. We have our generator. With what we have here, we can essentially stay off the grid indefinitely if we have to. When the crazy Iranians or the crazy sun decides to blow a gasket and produce us a nice little EMP pulse and burns out electronics, we will be able to live off the grid. That's because we take a second inverter, essentially like this one. We have a second laptop. We have a box that we put the generator in that are all Faraday cages. In other words, they electrically isolate the electronic devices so that an EMP pulse, the electricity, call it a static discharge from the EMP pulse, won't destroy the electronics. So while everybody else is running around like a bunch of zombies with no power, we will be sitting fat and happy in and with all the creature comforts, with, of course, the appropriate protective devices. If you get my drift, without bringing that stuff on camera and getting myself in a whole lot more trouble than I'm already in with the various authorities. So, the next time somebody like Bill Zam, famous media mogul, calls you, wants you to come on his show called, oh, I don't know, Surrounded by Idiots, and your power goes out, you're going to say, you know what? I should have listened to that clown and gotten myself some deep cycle batteries and an inverter, and then I could be speaking with the world famous Bill Zam. And who doesn't want to do that? I mean, even my cats want to talk to me. But that's unbelievable. So, that's about it. Might go back to the live camera now, or this could be it for the show. Who knows? Depends on what I feel like when this video ends. We'll see. Maybe I'm in a good mood, maybe I'm not. I don't know. So, well, there you go. That's about it. Just going to sit here and look stupid for a minute. I think I'm done. I think I'm done looking stupid. See how things go here.
And so there we go. That was it for the pre-recorded show. I, of course, am preparing to vacate the area and probably go to bed on account, well, I'm kind of tired and don't really feel like doing much else, so that's about it for the show. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Join us for our very special guest, Mr. Some guy, I forget what his name is, but he's going to be a good guest. Robert Evans, that's what his name is. He is going to be joining us from his alternative energy motorhome where he and his wife travel about the country. It should be very interesting. We're going to have some really nice graphics and photos and things like that. I think that's going to be it for tonight. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a nice evening. Thanks for stopping by. My name is Bill Zam, and I hope you enjoyed the show.